they invaded peaceful nations.
This is a criminal regime.
Slaughtered innocent people.
They're performing murder and terrible crimes, but at the same time trying to make it look as though it's correct.
Committed genocide.
He likened the Jews to a virus.
But how did Adolf Hitler and his small band of criminal conspirators persuade the German people to follow him on this horrific path?
He's clearly insane. His mouth would foam with rage, as he's like a sort of a rabid dog.
This series offers a unique perspective on the Third Reich. It shows how Hitler and his inner circle created an illusion of justice and legality, while behind the scenes they subverted democracy and planned a monstrous secret conspiracy based on a warped ideology and phony science. It's the story of a gangster regime that used not only violence and suppression, but which carefully groomed the German people into willing complicity in the worst crimes in history. The story of the rise of the Nazi Party begins in the final days of World War I. A young soldier called Adolf Hitler is in hospital. He has been blinded in a mustard gas attack and is recovering from his wounds.
With mustard gas, you'd get irritation of the eyes, there would be blisters coming out over your body, you'd suffer from nausea, you'd be vomiting.
He had burning eyes, as he described it, like burning coals in his head.
Austrian by birth, Hitler makes Germany his home. He feels such a love for this country that he celebrates in his adopted town of Munich when Germany declares war in 1914. He signs up for the army. And he serves his emperor and his country, running messages under fire at the front line. He's brave and wins the Iron Cross First Class and Second Class. But he's also distant. He is seen by his colleagues as a peculiar misfit.
They thought he was a weirdo, an odd fish.
He never made friends easily. He wasn't a sociable person. He never had been, he never becomes one.
He was like sort of somebody who was a loner. People thought he was a bit strange and a bit odd.
He is compulsive in his cleanliness. With an aversion to smoking, drinking, and women, his comrades call him the White Crow and the Woman Hater.
They found him unwilling to engage in the normal social activities that soldiers do.
Gaunt, weak, and delirious, half blind from gas, this is a very different Adolf Hitler from the man who will terrorize Europe. This is Hitler at his lowest ebb. Then, as he lies recuperating, there comes news that would shape his life forever.
One day in November, a priest comes into the ward, and the priest says to them, "The war is over, we've lost, we're going home."
World War I is over. Germany has surrendered.
Germany somehow had lost it without the French or the British ever being on German soil.
Hitler is utterly distraught.
The idea that you've suddenly been told that you've lost this war, and it seems to have come completely out of the blue, is of course going to make you absolutely berserk. And Hitler, as we know, was always the type of man who would go berserk at the slightest opportunity.
The painful question for Hitler is, how could he have been betrayed like this? Who could be responsible for this outrage? Crippled by despair, in his own words, he is plunged once again into blindness. He would later state,
I buried my burning head in the covers and pillows.
He said he cried more than he'd even cried on the day his mother died.
in his delirious state, the culprits swirl through his mind. He starts to blame those he sees as responsible. The Jews, the communists, the left-wing politicians back home who had meekly surrendered, even though the German army that Hitler had fought in was undefeated.
He later says, I felt intense hatred for the people who had done this to us. And the most convenient theory to subscribe to was this idea that people like him had been stabbed in the back.
He had been defeated, not through failure of military arms, but by the stab in the back, by effete politicians and corrupt Jewish bankers and financiers betraying the German people, betraying the great German army.
Hitler later wrote about how this moment transformed him forever.
When I was confined to bed, the idea came to me that I would liberate Germany, that I would make it great. I knew immediately that it would be realized.
There is another version of how he acquires his destiny. The story goes that during his hospital stay, Hitler was hypnotized by a psychologist, Professor Edmund Forster. Forster was treating Hitler's blindness, which he diagnosed as hysterical. In other words, caused by some mental trauma rather than physical injury due to gas.
And Forster said, "Sit up, man. How dare you give in to weakness?" So he sits up and he said, "Lesser men will stay blind, but greater men, titans, they'll overcome their blindness. Are you a titan?"
Using a candle, he convinces Hitler that if he could see the flame, then it would be proof of his uniqueness as a human being, and his destiny one day to lead Germany to greatness.
Where he's got this Svengali figure hovering over him saying, "Adolf, one day you will be the future rabble-rousing leader of Germany, and you will lead Germany back to becoming the greatest power in Europe."
It works. Hitler sees the flame and his sight quickly returns. Something has been awakened in Adolf Hitler.
He was thinking, actually, yes, you know what, maybe I am that type of man.
Although contended by some, this encounter goes a little way to explain Hitler's conviction that he will go from a simple corporal to a great leader. Just days after the German surrender, Hitler emerges bewildered and battered into a world in total chaos. The once proud German people are wretched and downtrodden. There's poverty and starvation. The emperor he had fought and suffered for has abdicated. Law and order is breaking down. A revolution is sweeping across the country. For a patriotic German soldier, there is nothing. The German army is being disbanded. He has no education, no social standing, zero prospects. He returns to his chosen home, the Bavarian city of Munich.
Munich was in total political chaos at the end of 1918, beginning of 1919.
What he witnesses from his dingy apartment in the city is frightening.
There'd been a socialist revolution, a Marxist was running Bavaria, the socialists were in power.
The old order is out. Chaos reigns. Leftist thugs are fighting running battles with militants from the right. Violent confrontations between the two sides are commonplace.
There were fights, bitter fights on the streets every night.
Bloody battles. I mean, hundreds. There are 700 deaths in something like 8 months.
To Hitler, the hated Marxists are the enemy within. They are dangerous as they are part of an international movement with no sense of patriotism. Communism despises the very idea of nationhood and has no respect for the German nationalism that Hitler so admires. Then comes something that makes a bad situation even worse. A spark that risks igniting it all in the summer of 1919. Across Europe, the victorious Allies are gathering in Paris. On the 28th of June 1919, they and Germany sign a momentous document, the Versailles Treaty. There is widespread rejoicing on the streets. But for Germany, Versailles spells catastrophe. The treaty demands revenge for World War I. It's a further humiliation which deeply affects Hitler. He cannot accept that Germany deserves such unjust treatment.
Nobody could have believed that Germany would receive such a harsh settlement in the Treaty of Versailles.
Germany is ordered to pay a huge 226 billion gold marks penalty for starting the war. It's the equivalent of $860 billion in today's money. That sum is made even harder to stomach by a massive reduction of territory. 13% of Germany's territory is lost. 6 million Germans lose their citizenship and are forced to become part of new countries like Czechoslovakia and Poland. 1/5 of German industry is taken over by the Allies.
And here they were being truncated, being damaged, and being deprived of a large section of the population. So that, added to the shame of defeat, meant that Germany, the people themselves, individually felt a very deep sense of pain.
Hitler's anger grows. The former star of Europe and rising industrial powerhouse has been crippled. In Germany, most people just breathe deeply and try to get on with life. A new democratic government takes shape. It is called the Weimar Republic and is named after the German city where it was founded. Created in August 1919, it is designed to replace the autocratic, militaristic rule of the Kaiser and his generals. Hitler regards the Weimar Republic as an abomination. To him, it is weak, dominated by the very same Jewish and liberal politicians who had stabbed Germany in the back and surrendered in World War I. But at this stage, he can do nothing about it. He has no connections with politics at all. Then an unlikely job offer comes along.
The one body that's going to give Hitler any chance of employment is the army, in which he's still technically serving. And one day he's approached by a man called Karl Mayer, who is the officer in charge of the kind of Bavarian Army's information department.
Mayer sees something in Hitler. He gives him the job of spying on the numerous new political parties that meet in the city's beer halls and cellars.
beer halls are an essential part of southern German political activity.
These beer halls would become political forums. Nationalists would go round them and give speeches. So would socialists.
Mayer sends him to observe a fringe right-wing group, the grandly named German Workers' Party.
This was basically two blokes and a ferret.
It was amateur hour. It was yet another one of these very small, noxious, febrile, anti-Semitic, angry groups of men meeting in beer halls and venting their spleen. At that time, it was nothing special.
In the autumn of 1919, Hitler attends their meetings, taking notes for Mayer. What he hears begins to inspire him.
But it just so happened on that night, something snapped, something spoke to him.
He likes the party's communist-bashing rhetoric, and the hatred of the Jews, and the socialists.
And rather than simply observe and report back, he then joins in.
He is quickly noticed by the party leader, Anton Drexler.
Drexler said, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name's Adolf Hitler." He said, "Would you be interested in joining this party?"
Adolf Hitler's journey into politics has begun. Quickly, he is made propaganda chief. He begins to dominate the small leadership committee of 7 that meet.
And within a very short time, people like Anton Drexler realise this is the man. We can't do without him. This is the man who's going to carry us forward.
It was very much about Hitler seizing the moment in those Munich beer halls, jumping onto tables and giving impassioned, impromptu speeches which carried people along.
So he dominates in a way that his colleagues in the war would have been astounded at. The leadership he shows, the skill, the ability to steer things his way, remarkable.
In Munich, Hitler develops what will become the foundation of the Nazi Party's ideology, a 25-point manifesto.
The 25 points remained sacrosanct all the way through. This was what we were rallying around if we were Nazis.
They're like tablets of stone. They're like something out of the Bible. They're like commandments.
It was against unfettered capitalism. It was against Jews. It was against anarchy. It was against Bolshevism.
Foreign policy goals were simple: to seize back all the lands the Allies had taken at the Treaty of Versailles, and an end to reparations, the crippling payments for the war demanded by the Allied powers.
Hitler's great achievement, his genius, I think one is fair to say, was to know what simple ideas to put across.
Alongside his new manifesto, he gave the party a new name and a new emblem. A blood-red flag with the swastika at its heart.
One of Hitler's great elements of his political genius is to recognise the power of iconography.
The visceral image of black on red really does have a powerful impact on the psyche. There is some genius in the simplicity of its message.
The flag becomes the calling card for the new party. It incorporated the colours of the old German Empire with the ancient Aryan image of the swastika.
So its colours were a nod to the past, but its symbol felt modern.
It plays, of course, on the tradition of the Christian cross. Germany still at this point is an incredibly religious society.
It's a very brutal, simple brand. From its beginning, it was a rallying brand.
It's a clear symbol with bright colours, and it did look good on flags, and it did look good when they marched down the streets. So he'd given them a clear identification.
Along with the emblem comes a new title: the National Socialist Workers' Party, or Nazis. The Nazi Party is born.
Hitler tried to fuse the two forces of socialism, which obviously had an enormous appeal to the German working class, and nationalism together in one.
By 1921, Hitler becomes leader of the Nazis. At this stage, his new movement does not believe in democracy. He wants to seize power by force. This approach resonates with a new man in the audience at party meetings, a man who will help him take the Nazis to their greatest heights. Hermann Göring.
Göring is misfit number 2. Göring is obviously sympathetic to all these rightist ideas, and obviously in the Munich of the early 20s, there's one man who's starting to dominate this political scene, and that's Adolf Hitler.
Göring, like Hitler, is a veteran of World War I. But unlike Hitler, his war record is the stuff of legend.
He was a star. He was well known. He was a flamboyant character. In those early days, he hadn't yet become the caricature fat man that we are so familiar with today. He was lean and mean and handsome.
At first, he served as an infantryman. But then he becomes a pilot and commands not just any squadron, but the most famous of the war, the Red Baron's Flying Circus. He shoots down 22 enemy aircraft and even wins the German Empire's highest award for gallantry, the Blue Max Medal. Then, in the dying days of World War I, the war hero is beaten up by a leftist gang. It is something that will mark him forever. The humiliation gets worse after the war. He is unemployed, spending his days hunting for a job. Like Hitler, he becomes appalled at the state Germany now finds itself in. The former air ace is eventually forced to make a living on the road as a comedy stunt pilot, performing aerobatics.
And then one Monday night, he turns up and sees Hitler talk, and Göring's just blown away. And he says, finally, I've come across someone who's got a clear and definite aim. And suddenly it's this kind of moment of epiphany for Göring. This is the man.
A day after first seeing Hitler talk, the two men who will become the most powerful Nazis in history meet. Hitler signs Göring up straight away, recruiting him into the party.
When Hitler and Göring met, there was a really good fit. What Göring represented to Hitler was a kind of war hero he had always been looking for.
As for Göring, he doesn't buy into all Hitler's policies, but he is seduced by the prospect of power.
A shrewd, self-regarding individual who sees in the politics of the Nazi Party a means of self-promotion.
Together, they start to bring the fledgling Nazi Party out of the shadows and into public life. Hitler starts to move into the open, but on a very small scale. He refines his oratory skills in the beer cellars and halls of Munich.
Hitler emerges very, very quickly. He basically knows how to whip up a crowd, he can read a crowd, he's very sensitive to the mood of crowds. He knows when to be quiet, he knows when to be loud, he knows how to manipulate, he knows what the crowd wants to hear. He gives them what they want.
But rabble-rousing is not the only way he will get his message across. In December 1920, he buys a weekly paper, the Völkischer Beobachter.
He begins to realize that he needs to operate on a bigger scale. He purchases the shares in the Völkischer Beobachter, where the effective use of big headlines, attention-grabbing content, and images is combined to forge the image of a party which is simultaneously reactionary in content but incredibly modern.
And this illustrates, I think, the Nazis' way of using every form of modern media communication before other parties actually latched onto it.
The paper now becomes a major tool in pushing the Nazi message to a wider public. Circulation rises from 8,000 to 25,000 readers. But the Nazis are still only a small fringe organization. If they are to fulfill Hitler's plan of seizing power by force, they need more than newspapers. They need muscle.
He's conscious on the streets in disturbed Germany, you need the heavy mob.
We've got to remember that politics in Germany at that time was violent, very much militarized.
Enter the SA, the Sturmabteilung, Hitler's brown-shirted heavies.
The SA are very much the anti-intellectual movement of the Nazi Party. They are disaffected people who have fallen through the cracks of the Weimar system. A lot of them are young men who are unemployed and for whom the promise of Weimar capitalism hasn't really come true.
The recruiting message is simple.
Come and join a cause. We'll give you a uniform. We'll let you bash heads. We'll let you kick communists and Jews. You'll have a whale of a time, lads. And we'll provide the beer as well.
The uniformed SA get involved in street brawls. They eject hecklers from meetings. They intimidate opponents, but they are also ill-disciplined. Now Hitler has the perfect role for his trusted ally, Hermann Göring. In 1923, he is put in charge of the SA. The former war hero soon knocks the brown shirts into shape. Hitler would later state,
I gave him a disheveled rabble. In a very short time, he had organized a division of 11,000 men.
By now, Nazi Party membership is still small, but expanding to 14,000 members from the 2,000 Hitler started with. For the first time, there are offices outside Munich as the party expands its base. Then member number 14,303 signs up, Heinrich Himmler, who joins the party in the summer of 1923. Himmler is an altogether less impressive character than Göring and Hitler. He presents himself as a heroic figure, a dashing fencer and officer cadet. But in truth, he is anything but. He is a former chicken farmer who studies agronomy at Munich University. His hobbies include diary writing and stamp collecting.
One of the things that drives Himmler is the fact that he's a bit younger and he hasn't properly served in the war. He's born in 1900, and towards the end of the war, he's only in a training battalion. And so he never actually sees service on the front, and this really annoys him.
But he comes out of the war almost ashamed that he hadn't done more. His life is sad, to put it in short terms. He seemed to be looking for a cause, something he could relate to, something he could put his great energies into.
Himmler is drawn by Hitler's populist message and right-wing beliefs. But he is also driven by his personal loathing of the Jews.
In his diary, which has survived, we see him talking about the Jewish question all the way through from about 1918 to 1922, and he talks about the Jews as the scourge of humanity. They have to be removed from society. So he's very strong on the anti-Semitic policy of the Nazis. And of course, Himmler goes on to be the leader of the SS, which eventually plans the final solution.
At first, Himmler remains on the margins of the Nazi Party, in a paramilitary group loosely connected to Hitler. There are few indications that he will become the most murderous and feared Jew-hater of them all. Nevertheless, the three major Nazi players, the three misfits, who would shape the Nazi Party's future are now in place. all they need is an opportunity to strike. Now events conspire to help them. Germany plunges into economic disaster. Hyperinflation is gripping the economy. Grotesque mismanagement of the nation's finances means that a loaf of bread rises from 165 marks to over 1 billion in the space of 10 months. For ordinary Germans on fixed wages, that's an unimaginable increase.
It is the workers who suffer most. He can buy less, his wife in the shops can buy less, his children have less. So for the working class, it was a deeply disillusioning time.
A pound of meat rises to 9 billion marks, a beer to 52 billion. The middle classes were also affected. Those who had been carefully saving for a secure future saw their hopes ruined.
The tragedy for the middle class was that most of them had invested, were still investing, in pensions, and they found that these were almost wiped out within 2 or 3 days, given the pace of inflation. So the stability the middle class buy into through their pensions and their income and their investments, that was shattered. So the middle class feel their moorings of their lives are being taken away from them.
Once more, unrest returns to Germany's streets. For the Weimar government, it's a disaster. Germany defaults on its reparations payments to the Allies. In lieu of payment, French and Belgian troops seize the only asset Germany has. They occupy the Ruhr, the industrial heartland of the country.
The Ruhr was the main centre of industrial activity in post-war Germany. And for that to be occupied by the French was a shattering blow. They actually took away the basis of their economy for that period.
Foreign troops' boots are on German sovereign territory.
There's nothing worse for a proud people than to be occupied. It reminded them of just how vulnerable they were to the vindictiveness of the Allies.
These allies are determined to hold back the German economy. They're taking our money. They want total humiliation from the German people. So this was a rallying call, if you like, for nationalism.
In Munich, Hitler has now risen to head of the Bavarian Kampfbund, a loose affiliation of fellow right-wing revolutionaries.
The so-called Combat League, a set of disparate nationalist militarist groups in the early 20s.
The group is united by one thing: the Weimar Republic must go.
Hitler thinks this is his moment. There's chaos. This is the perfect time for our battle group to actually seize control.
The only question is how. The inspiration comes from abroad. Europe's most successful fascist, Benito Mussolini, storms to power in Italy just months before, in October 1922. He has acquired huge popular support and marches on Rome with his 30,000 black shirts.
Mussolini gets this band of fascist supporters. They then march through the streets. They go to the palace of the king, and then Mussolini takes power. So this is a very romantic notion of how you can overthrow a major government and take power.
Mussolini and Hitler had many parallels. Like Hitler, he was a former soldier. He had also been wounded. Like Hitler, Mussolini, a former journalist, understands the power of the press. And while Mussolini has his black shirts, Hitler has his brown shirts.
Hitler hears about this and he thinks, this sounds like a good idea. We could do this here. We could take power in Munich and then march to Berlin. And as we go to Berlin, we can get all the people who want to get rid of the old democratic government and overthrow it. That's the idea. So the plot starts to hatch. It hatches in little secretive meetings and dinners.
The first challenge is who to lead the revolt. Hitler is well aware he is too unknown to unite the whole of Germany. He needs a figurehead. He has a suitable person in mind. General Erich Ludendorff, national hero of the German right and one of the great commanders of World War I.
So Ludendorff had this military position which was highly attractive to the Nazis. They were so pleased he joined their cause. He pressed all the right buttons, we might say.
In many ways, you can see Ludendorff as the kind of titular head, the kind of symbolic head of this movement, and whereas Hitler is often referred to as the drummer. He's the one beating on the march. He's the one who's making it go, and it's Ludendorff at its head. And that's kind of how you should see the two roles. But Ludendorff is a very, very important figure.
Next, the plotters discuss the mechanics of how to seize power.
The aim is to challenge the Bavarian government in Munich as the first step towards challenging the government of Germany overall.
First, Hitler will hijack a major political meeting of the leaders of Bavaria. Present will be the state prime minister, Gustav von Kahr. He would force von Kahr and the leaders of the state police and military to join the coup. Ludendorff would be critical in persuading the three men to come on side.
If someone as senior and as distinguished as Ludendorff supported the Nazis and Hitler, then that gave Hitler enormous prestige.
With von Kahr and the two others on his side, Hitler believes he can get the army and police to join the revolt. Simultaneously, units, including Himmler's SA group, will take control of the key military and police buildings in Munich. The date is finally set. Hitler makes his way to a public meeting at Munich's massive Bürgerbraukeller.
It starts on the evening of the 8th of November at around 8:15 when Hitler turns up in a red Mercedes at the Bürgerbraukeller in Munich.
Inside, Gustav von Kahr is addressing the crowd. With him are the two chiefs of the Bavarian police and army.
So all the three triumvirate men who were running Bavaria at that time were in this one beer hall at the same time.
He decided to go to the Bürgerbraukeller and to seize the initiative at the meeting and to pin von Kahr down and the triumvirate to backing the revolution.
All across Munich, SA activists get the call to don their uniforms and head to assembly points around the city to be issued with rifles. Soon, SA men armed with rifles and steel helmets arrive at the beer hall by truck. Together with 600 SA men, Hitler storms the 3,000-strong meeting.
Hitler is very theatrical. He then marches up to the stage with a pistol in his hand.
He declares,
"The national revolution has broken out."
only it hadn't. The leader of the revolution, Ludendorff, wasn't even there. He was late. Hitler now takes the three state leaders into a back room and desperately tries to convince them himself to join the coup.
But of course, the Bavarian triumvirate weren't ready or prepared to allow this gutter-snipe orator to take over.
As Hitler argues, Nazi sympathizers and brown shirts, including Himmler, continue moving in on military buildings around the city. Hitler has to turn the situation around.
Hitler needs these people on side if he's going to succeed.
Pistol in hand, he threatens to kill them. but they won't budge.
You then have hours of these negotiations going on in which the Bavarian politicians are very reluctant to join Hitler, but Hitler desperately needs them on side. He realizes actually, even though he's got a pistol as a negotiating tool, it can't really be fired at these people. That's not going to work.
So he storms back into the main hall of the Bürgerbraukeller to address the crowd. In a desperate speech, he tries everything to win their support.
When he makes his impassioned speech in the beer cellar and says, the government is willing to give way to us. They're willing for us to form the next government. They weren't. They hadn't agreed to it. But he claimed that was the case. And he said, outside, the army and the police have come to our side. They hadn't. But they cheer and clap and bawl with delight.
Finally, Ludendorff arrives. The mood is electric. With Ludendorff in the room, the three leaders of Bavaria agree to join the coup.
Eventually, after quite a lot of dithering and toing and froing, they agree.
Meanwhile, across Munich, SA units, including Himmler's outfit, have set up barricades and surrounded the army and police buildings. Some army and police units even agree to join the uprising. It seems the coup really might work. But at other army barracks, soldiers refuse to side with the Nazis. With the coup in the balance, everything depends on what Adolf Hitler does next.
He then leaves, Hitler, he leaves the hall, leaving Ludendorff to keep control of things.
As Hitler heads across the city to check on the progress of his putsch, Ludendorff allows the Bavarian leaders to go.
Ludendorff very unwisely accepted the word of von Kahr and his two military and police cohorts that they would be good boys and support the putsch and let them go.
Instead, von Kahr rallies troops against Hitler.
Kahr goes back on his word and says, no, I'm here to control things.
Hitler now returns to the beer hall and makes a critical error. Rather than go out and try to win over more army and police units, he waits, convinced they will come on side anyway. He remains there, passive, for several hours.
They stay in the beer cellar for some time, hoping that those outside will come around to their way of thinking. By then, people have sobered up, and it's never quite the same.
Meanwhile, as Hitler dithers, in Berlin, news of the putsch reaches the government. It immediately issues a proclamation declaring Hitler and his supporters guilty of high treason.
It was high treason. You've got to remember that. To engage in treason, attacking a sitting government, was no small beer.
The conspirators back in Munich are now all staring at the death penalty. But it is Ludendorff who takes charge.
And at one point you have Ludendorff in this fantastic Prussian way. He goes, "Wir marschieren, we will march."
Finally, with 2,000 men, including Ludendorff and Goering at his side, the Nazis march on central Munich. But the authorities are waiting for them and have prepared defenses. It is the moment of truth. "16 Nazis are killed. Goering is among the wounded." In later years, the official Nazi account would tell a very heroic version of these events. Few mentioned the 4 dead policemen. Nor did people dwell on how Hitler and Himmler fled the field of battle.
Hitler escapes in an ambulance, runs away from the scene of the crime, if you like. Not really that heroic when you look at it. And he ends up being arrested a couple of days later. And then, of course, he's put on trial for high treason. So really, why it's called the beer hall putsch is that Hitler, for a little bit, took over a beer hall.
It was very clear that Hitler didn't really know what to do. And of course, you know, in later retellings by the Nazi Party, this was a very definite, prearranged, purposeful night. But of course, it was just a muddle. It was a muddle by amateur revolutionaries who really didn't have the means or the ability to actually mount a proper coup.
And so, the putsch becomes a cause for celebration in Nazi mythology and an annual act of remembrance in the Nazi calendar.
And he erected these enormous shrines to them right in the heart of Munich, very close to where they had been shot down. And on the anniversary of the putsch, each year on November the 9th, the Nazi leaders, getting steadily more portly, dressed themselves in their old brown uniforms that they'd worn at the time of the putsch, Goering and Hitler in the front rank of the marchers, and would parade through the streets of Munich, and this became a piece of theatre to the muffled drum rolls. No one was allowed to speak. There was just total silence as the Nazi leadership paraded through and reenacted the putsch. Each year they did this, and they continued to do this right up until 1939, when a lone would-be assassin, a left-wing worker called Georg Elser, detonated a bomb in the beer hall where the putsch had started, almost wrecking it, and after that the marches were discontinued.
But back in 1924, it seems as if it is all over for Adolf Hitler. He is arrested. His Nazi party is disbanded for starting a coup. His newspaper, the Völkischer Beobachter, is also banned. Nevertheless, even though he seems to be facing disaster, Hitler has learned a crucial lesson that will ultimately carry him to power. Being on the fringe of politics won't work. Most people don't support parties that try to seize power through force. If he wants to fulfill his destiny and become the leader of Germany, he will have to find another way.
The main lesson that Hitler learnt from the putsch was that violence doesn't work, especially unsuccessful violence.
He realised that if he was going to come to power, he'd have to do so legally.
You do it constitutionally by using the electoral system. We'll carry people with us. We don't need a majority even. We just need to be dominant in our thinking.
So, even though Hitler's coup looks like a total failure, in fact, the rise of the Nazis is only just beginning.